When you think about the hip joint, the best way to think about it is it's a ball and socket joint, okay? And it's made up of the femur and your pelvis. You can see on the screen here, there's the femur piece and then the ball and socket joint inside of there. There's a lot of reasons that people have hip pain, and it can be from things like arthritis or what's called femoral acetabular impingement, where you have abnormal bone that impinges upon another area of bone. We see something called avascular necrosis, which is another way that basically the blood supply to the bone in your hip dies, and that can be from a variety of things such as alcohol use, tobacco use, certain medications, steroids can cause this, or if you have sickle cell disease, you can also get this as well. We see other causes of hip pain that aren't related to the bones, and that's things like ligament and muscle sprains. You can get hip flexor tendonitis, or the most common one that I see in clinic is something called hip bursitis, which is pain on the outside part of your hip, and that usually affects people when they're sleeping. When they lay on their side, it really bothers them. The other thing is the spine, which has nerves that come out kind of in the back of your spine that go down your leg, is the great pretender of all things. And people can show up with hip pain, but it's really actually due to nerve compression in their spine. So lots of different causes here, but the main one we're going to focus on is arthritis. As you can see here, there's a normal ball and socket joint on your left there, and there's a big space between the two bones, okay? When we take x-rays in clinic, I specifically take x-rays where people are putting weight on their legs, so they're weight-bearing x-rays, because it shows us what does your joint look like when you're normally walking. And this person on the right-hand side here, you can see there's no space left in that joint there. When that cartilage, that road surface wears out, and the best way to think about arthritis is like the roads of Dallas. They were good when they were put in 50 years ago, and now they got potholes and they got cracks. This person has an uneven road surface, and when that bone starts to see that force and that pressure, that's what causes the swelling and the pain. So the question is, what do we do about hip arthritis? And there's a lot of stuff prior to getting to surgery, and I think the big thing that I try and talk to my patients about when we're back, in clinic talking about this, is I want to exhaust all the other options before we jump to surgery. Surgery is the answer for a lot of problems, but it isn't the first answer. So we try things like anti-inflammatory medications, and that's like meloxicam or Mobic, which is long-acting ibuprofen, Aleve, ibuprofen, activity modification. So if you're a marathon runner, maybe that's not the best thing for you. Maybe swimming or bicycling would be better. Weight loss is important, both for hip and knee arthritis. Your hip joint sees roughly 4 times your body weight for every step you take. So losing even 5 pounds can help you lose 20 pounds per step on your hip joint, which can be really helpful if you have hip pain. Physical therapy can be helpful. And another thing we can do is steroid injections that decrease the swelling and pain inside your hip joint. But those kind of have varying benefits. And I would say that they usually aren't long lasting, and it's a temporary Band-Aid. But for some people, they can be helpful. The next thing that we then talk about for hip arthritis is doing a hip replacement. In a hip replacement, we go in and we cut out that ball that has the arthritis on it, and you get a metal stem that goes down inside your bone here, okay? Then we cut out the arthritis on the socket side, and you have a metal cup on the socket side with this highly engineered plastic liner. So let's talk about kind of a little bit how we get to surgery and how it all works. The first thing when I see you in the office we talk about is we got to make sure that everybody thinks you're healthy enough to have surgery. So we go through a whole preoperative clearance process where I get lab work on you to make sure you're as healthy as you can be. We have your primary care doctor along with any of your specialty doctors, whether that be a cardiologist or a pulmonologist or a kidney doctor, all send us letters to make sure that everybody agrees that this is okay to go ahead with surgery. Surgery itself, you come in the morning of surgery, you go totally to sleep. We give you a nerve block while you're asleep. I do a newer based approach called an anterior hip replacement, which you get a small incision about this long on the front part of your hip. We go down in between the muscles. We don't cut through any muscles like the old way of doing hip replacements. And we perform the hip replacement. It takes about 60 minutes to do the entire hip replacement. You're up walking, putting full weight on your leg immediately the day of surgery. And for most people, I would say 80% or so, you go home that same day and sleep in your own bed that night. We have physical therapists come out to your house for roughly the first 2 weeks after surgery. And then the main thing that we encourage you to do is walk. Initially, you start out on a walker, then you progress to a cane, and then to nothing pretty quickly after that. I think recovery percentages are always something people want to know, and how long is it going to take me to get back to activities? People are usually 50% recovered at 6 weeks, and that means I have some mild soreness, but I'm glad I had my hip replaced. And then almost fully recovered by about 3 months or so. Joint replacement surgery still takes a full year to get over, but by 3 months, people tell me, "Man, I should have done this years ago," and I think that's a pretty telling. So, another common question I get is, "Are there any restrictions after surgery?" There are no restrictions. So, if you want to swim, bicycle, hike, if you want to ski, if you want whatever you want to do with your hip replacement, I'll let you do it. There are no kind of restrictions afterwards. There have been some advances in hip replacement. I mentioned the anterior approach, and that's the muscle-sparing, minimally invasive one. It has a lower risk of dislocation, especially in the first few months after surgery, which is always a concern of mine. We've had pretty great advances in component longevity. So at this point, if you can make it to roughly 50 years old before you get your hip replaced, I tell you that there's a high likelihood that it'll last you the rest of your life and then some. So in the lab, the hip replacements last at this point roughly 100 years. So component wear over time is not an issue for me. And then the last one is intraoperative kind of technology and templating. Before we even go back to surgery, I can tell you roughly within one size or so what I'm going to put into your hip, where it's going to be, and what it's going to look like. I do all of my templating like this before surgery, so you can basically plan it before we even get back to the operating room, which is helpful.